Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. Hey guys, I have some exciting news for all of you parents. For a limited time, we are offering 15% off all kids products at Christian Parenting. The Christian Parenting store has amazing resources like Noteworthy Kids, Noteworthy Prayers, which are sets of scripture-based cards designed to inspire and encourage your kids. We also have our scripture affirmation cards that offer daily encouragement and positive messages for your little ones. And there are also multiple devotionals written just for kids, packed with engaging activities and scripture readings designed to bring your family closer together and deepen your child's relationship with the Lord. And there's so much more. Christian Parenting has so many resources to support your child's spiritual growth. So head over to cpgive.org to explore the full collection and find the perfect resources for your family. Remember that these offers won't last long, so take advantage of this special sale today. Again, that's cpgive.org for 15% off all kids products. So one of my favorite episodes I've ever done on this podcast was with Sandra Stanley when she was talking about her book, Parenting, Getting It Right. I loved it, and I go back to it often, both the book and the interview. And so I was so excited when I got the opportunity to talk with Sandra again, and this time with her daughter, Allie. They wrote a book for moms and daughters called Meet Me in the Middle, which focuses on building healthy relationships between moms and their daughters. And since I have a daughter, I was so eager to read this book and talk with them. In this convo, we talk about the importance of communication, understanding, and forgiveness in maintaining a close relationship during the challenging teen years, the pressures and fears that teen girls face, like comparison, identity formation, and the fear of being alone. And as moms, I think we can still relate to all those fears. And they give us practical guidance and activities for moms and daughters to navigate all these topics together. I love their emphasis on the importance of family relationships for both faith and personal growth. Even if you don't have a daughter, you're going to learn a lot from this episode, so I hope that you enjoy. Hello, Sandra and Allie. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Hi.
Steph. Thank you for having us.
We've been excited about talking to you.
Yeah, Sandra, you've been on before, but Allie, you are new.
Mm-hmm. I'm new.
So
First time.
welcome and welcome back.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, just for people who don't know, tell us about your relationship, tell us about who you are, and tell us about your families and all the good stuff.
All right. Well, I'm Sandra, and I'm married to Andy. We've been in ministry. We've been married and been in ministry for almost 36 years. We've got 3 kids. Andrew is 32. He is a stand-up comedian after 4 years of out-of-state tuition at Auburn University for a finance degree, but I'm not bitter. And then Garrett is 30. He's in digital marketing. Allie is 28, and she's in ministry also. She and her husband both, so that's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. I've got 2 grandchildren. Allie has almost 2-year-old, and then my middle son Garrett has a 6-month-old. And I'm telling you, grandparenthood is not overrated. It is the best. Mm-hmm. So that's super fun. And I'll let you tell her.
Yeah, I'm Allie. Like she said, I've been in student ministry pretty much since I was no longer a student. The second I stopped being a student, I went back and was in student ministry and met my husband in seminary, and his name is Clay. And now we have a almost 2-year-old. And my husband is the young adults pastor at our church. So I get to be in student ministry and young adults, and it's so fun and so great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even when Allie was in high school, she was already doing ministry with an adult in a small group of middle school girls. So she really has a deep well of student ministry since.
So fun.
Yeah.
They're great.
So we're thankful for that.
We have followed the same footsteps because I graduated high school, went to college, started volunteering in the youth ministry in college, interned, went to seminary, worked in a family youth ministry forever, and then now here I am. So I love
that's
youth and children's ministry. It's so fun.
It's a great
so
path.
Fun.
It's a great path.
Sweet.
And
it's crazy.
It prepares you for parenthood for sure.
It does. I did middle school ministry, and I really thought I would be a little more prepared for the middle school years, but there are some surprises.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite now, though, is that I'll tell my kids, I'm like, I did middle school and high school ministry. Like, I was the fun one up on stage.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, no way.
I can't believe
like,
that,
no,
Mom.
people
You're
like,
you're just Mom. Yeah.
Yeah. That's coming for me. I know it is.
Oh, you
think you're so cool until you have kids that tell you aren't.
Yeah.
So
it is true.
Yeah.
That is so true. Even I'm like, you can talk to me. Like, I can talk about lots of things. They're like, no. I'm like, okay.
Thanks, Mom.
All right, fine.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so I always like to start off with this one question. So, Sandra, you've answered before, but you can answer again. I feel like you guys have so much experience between the two of you, and in totally different stages in all the student ministry experience. So I'm super excited to hear your answers to my question of what do you want every parent to know?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's hard to distill it down to one thing, but I think what I would say is, particularly to moms, is I want moms to know that it is possible to keep a healthy and close relationship with your kids and with your daughters, even through those tricky middle school and high school years. I think that is so important for them to just be able to rest and know that this is possible. And communication is the key to that. And we'll talk a lot about that.
And I would say, as a parent, about almost 2 years now. No, just coming from a ministry perspective, I think one of the most frustrating things was, we have the students once a week. We have them on Sundays and then they go home. And so what I love is telling parents, like, hey, you're equipped to also tell your children biblical truth. Like, you don't have to only rely on church on Sunday. You don't have to just hope that Sundays are doing enough. Like, you have them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, some Saturdays probably. And it's also your job to enforce those biblical truths and teach them the same things that, church is instilling in them. So it's a partnership. It's not just church. So that's been, one of the things that I've seen just in ministry of parents being like, yeah, you go on Sundays. We don't need to talk about it during the rest of the week. And it's like, no, you do. We need, as ministry workers, we need you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where they learn to have it stick, right? Like, that's where they learn how to bring their faith into their entire lives.
Yeah.
And there are so many great resources out there to help parents, because I think it is really hard and scary to think about all the questions kids will ask and how do you talk about all these things? How do you learn a biblical worldview and teach a biblical worldview and all the things? I mean, but there are great resources out there.
That's right. Sure. There are so many good things. Yep.
Yeah. I want to talk about your book, because you guys wrote a book together, which is so fun. I just love that. I want to hear a little bit about the process. So it's called Meet Me in the Middle. It's for moms and their middle school to high school daughters. I told you I have a 8-year-old daughter. She's going into 3rd grade. She thinks she's a high schooler, but I do know she's my 3rd. So I know how fast it goes. And I know that she is truly going to be a tween and a teen, like, tomorrow.
Right.
So
that's right.
I'll take all the resources and I have all the questions.
Yeah.
So, but I want to hear first, what was it like to write a book together, and what made you decide, like, this is the time we're going to write this book together?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with kind of why as a mom, I am so aware that as you approach middle school and high school years, you start kind of panicking a little bit, because of what you remember about your own relationship, your own life going through those years, or because you're hearing stories of other parents of teenagers and some of the things that they're going through. And so typically moms and parents in general are pretty nervous kind of going into those years. And so Allie and I really wanted to write this book just as a tool for moms to use with their daughters to pave that pathway of communication during those tricky years, and really to do it a little bit early, to talk about some tricky topics early before there's drama or before there's tension, and be able to point back to that when those more difficult times come. So that was kind of my reason for writing it. And then writing it with Allie was so much fun. We are wired completely differently.
So different.
So she's more artsy. So she's like the artist, I'm the engineer. So, that's how our brains work.
Well, even the notes we have for this podcast is pretty hilarious.
Completely. That would be a funny screenshot, actually, to show the difference in our personalities. But it was so fun writing it with her, and the process was amazing. There were some of the chapters I would write first and sort of hand them off to her, and she would craft the girls around that, or give me some feedback of some things to change based on her being more current with school, with middle school and high school age girls. And then some of the chapters she would write first and then toss it to me, because we wanted there to obviously be some cohesiveness between the chapters for the moms and the girls. And then doing the meet me in the middle part was super fun. And she, again, is so creative. She was masterful at that part. So then you can tell your why. And
yeah, I mean, I think similar to what we were just talking about, being in student ministry for so long and now being a mom, of like, how do we equip specifically moms to have these difficult conversations? But also I think one of the biggest fears and weights that middle school and high school girls walk around with, there's just this like deep fear of being alone, and being isolated and losing their friends and not having a significant other and not having plans on Friday night. And I think the combination of like, hey, first of all, you have a Heavenly Father who loves you and is always with you. That's a big theme. But also, hey, you have your mom, and your mom is like obsessed with you. Like, she loves you and wants to know what's going on in your life, and wants to know the things that you're carrying, and wants to know the anxiety and the comparison and what you're struggling with. And hey, she might even have similar struggles, believe it or not. And she might have something to share, but also you can get to know her. And just in that connection, you start to realize, hey, I don't have to do this by myself. I'm not alone in this. And so that's a big why for me. And the process was so fun. I mean, we kind of got together and figured out the structure, and then we wrote separately pretty much. And then the meet me in the middle was just a fun. So how it works is she wrote to moms, I wrote to girls. And then in the middle of the book is interactions and conversations to have. And so,
we picked 8 topics, Steph, that we thought were really critical for moms and daughters to talk about ahead of time. 8 different topics. So I wrote 8 chapters to mom, Allie 8 chapters to the girls, and then the meet me in the middle. There's some, again, some activities that pull them together and really set them up for success and for connecting with each other, learning more about each other, realizing that, I think one of the things Allie said, and she's talked about a lot, is it gives daughters the opportunity to see their moms in a different context. Like, she actually has some fears too. And she actually struggles with comparing herself to other people. And, she's not perfect. She's not, girls know their moms aren't perfect. They're very aware, but it gives you some conversation pieces to put some reality around.
Yeah. Girls might not know that their moms know that they're not perfect.
That's true. They'll learn that.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. I love the way that it's structured. I love that there's like both perspectives, and then the meet me in the middle is it's so practical. Like, it's encouraging and practical, like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So I love that.
And fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully fun.
Yeah. Okay, I want to you cover so many things in the book, but I want to talk about a few in particular. I want to start with kind of the pressure that kids today face. I feel like that's huge, especially for girls. So what are some of the like challenges and pressures that teen girls face that you kind of write about in this book? Like, let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, comparison is a huge thing. And these days with social media, you can see everything, even though you probably shouldn't. I think just like fear of the future. I know for me, especially in high school, going down the whole stress rabbit trail of I got to get a good grade because I got to get into college and I have to get a good job, and just the anxiety of the future that you kind of carry that pressure. I think fear, I think identity formation, figuring out who you are, relationships, friendships, romantic relationships with your family members. I mean, there's so much pressure. And I feel like as the world progresses, it only kind of grows and becomes more and more and more. And so speaking into where does your faith fit into all of that? And where does your relationship with your mom or a trusted adult fit into all of that? I think can be a huge relief of that. All of that pressure.
Yeah. In the beginning of the book, we wanted to lay a faith foundation. So we talk about some of the basics of faith in Christ, salvation and who we are in Christ and the Holy Spirit's role in our life as it relates to all of these topics that we talk about throughout the book. So we lay that foundation in the beginning. And, we just want our girls to know who they are and not be swayed by the meanness of middle school or high school. We want them, like Allie said, to understand that we always lose when we play the comparison game. So that's one of the topics. Relationships with family, our inner circle people, relationships with friends and boys, romantic relationships. We just want them to be able to make wise choices about who they surround themselves with. And then fears, Allie mentioned, we want our girls to know that fear does not have to be the boss of them. And, as we wrap Philippians 4 through 9 through all of these topics, we just see some amazing solutions to some of these things. Stress and pressure, again, there's avoidable and unavoidable kinds of stresses and pressures. So how do we learn how to say no to one thing so that we can say yes to something that's better? And then decision making. We talk a lot. We've got one chapter just about decision making. We want the girls to know that they are writing the stories of their lives one decision at a time, and how important that is. So we have them ask a couple of questions about decision making. What's the wise thing to do in this particular decision? And then what story do I ultimately want to tell? So that's kind of how we break it down. And, again, to Allie's point, right now in the world that they're living in, there's so much piling on. So as moms, we need to model what we want them to do. And we also need to take these opportunities and be intentional to have the conversations ahead of time.
Yeah. I love that you talk about those fears, and that, Allie, I think you had mentioned the moms might have the same fears as their daughters. I think a lot of those fears that you already listed, like the pressure to perform, social media comparison, all those things. I mean, so many parents struggle with those too. So do you have any encouragement for moms who are like, okay, I'm worried my daughter is going to be worried about the same things I'm worried about. Like, how do we identify some of our own fears so that we can set them aside and help our girls work through them?
Yeah. Well, to your point, I think a big part of the solution is identifying the fear. So what am I afraid of? And really, there are a whole bunch of very common fears. We're all, moms and daughters both are afraid of missing out. It just looks different in different seasons. Afraid of missing out, afraid of falling behind, afraid of being left out, afraid of being alone, that lonely thing. Allie talks brilliantly, I think, about that, because that's one of the things that I think is very common among our girls is, oh my goodness, I'm going to be alone. So those are some of those fears, but I think identifying it, having conversations between mom and daughter about it, and even, on some appropriate level, holding each other accountable or reminding each other the truth that God is near. That's part of that Philippians 4 passage that we use. God is near, and just reminding each other of that really biblical truth that, that we know there's some things God promises and there's some things he doesn't promise. But one of the things he promises is, I'm going to be near. Your life isn't going to be necessarily perfect and go the way you want, but I am going to be near. And so I think that's one thing that I would say about that fear.
And idea. I think as far as, oh no, I don't want my daughter to experience the same thing, I think there is a lot of healing and vulnerability and authenticity of sharing with your daughter in an appropriate amount. Without really passing it on, like there's going to be similar things that you do fear, but I think partnering together to move forward instead of hiding it and be like, oh, you're scared of that? That's crazy. I've never been afraid ever. That almost isolates more. And so coming together, discussing the silly fears, we talk about that, but also the real life fears, and also talking about how, hey, we're going to be afraid of these things. We were created to be in community, so it's only natural to be afraid of being alone. But how do we not let that fear push our actions? How do we not the chapter's called Fear is Not in Charge. How do we not allow the fear that we do feel to create action in us that are unhealthy? Like you're afraid they're going to gossip about you, so you're tempted to gossip about them first, or you're afraid that you're going to be left out, so you're going to leave someone else out first. How do we avoid that? Because ultimately, if you're making decisions based off fear, you're going to go in a direction that you do not want to go in. And that's true for daughters, but it's also true for moms. And also moms modeling that for their girls of like, hey, I'm feeling afraid right now, so I'm being tempted to do this, but I'm going to say no to fear because fear is not in charge. I'm going to go this route instead. I think really puts a practical nature to this idea that, these are things that are going to come and it's okay, but how do we make healthy decisions based off them?
Yeah. I love that emphasis.
Yeah.
I love that emphasis on the healthy, open communication because that changes so much, right? Like I'm going to share differently with Harriet, my daughter, than you guys will with each other because of age. But as Harriet gets older and the stages of parenting change, like I need to share differently about the things that I fear so that she doesn't feel like she's alone, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Like that's so helpful.
One of the things Allie and I were talking about as it relates to the book is this is a book that is going to be differently applied when your daughter is in 6th grade versus 10th grade. So we want to encourage moms to come back around later and do it again.
Yes.
So do it in middle school if your daughter's in middle school now or almost, but then come back a few years later and revisit some of those ideas. You don't necessarily have to go through the whole book, but revisit these same tensions and these same topics because they're going to manifest differently in high school than they do in middle school. Yet they're the same issues. Yeah. They're the same ones in both age categories. They just look a little different.
Yeah. Let's talk about the mother-daughter relationship a little bit. Like, I think that it's really tempting as our kids get older to think that we're not important anymore, or they don't want to be around us, or like other people are going to influence them more. But how are the family relationships really important during the teen years?
Yeah, they really are. Family relationships are so important because, for one reason, we are only as happy as our inner circle or core relationships are healthy. And we know that because of a number of reasons, but I've got a bunch of teacher friends, and my teacher friends have told me they can tell when something is amiss at home because of the changes that happen with kids in their personalities. Their grades drop, their personalities change a little. They might get quiet or start to withdraw, or they might start acting out more. And they always know something's going on at home because there's there's something that we can't see. Something's going on at home. Our kids are highly and emotionally impacted by family relationships, and we just know that. And we know that also because we are made in the image of a relational God. So we are hardwired to be relational. So those relationships are so important. And those inner circle relationships, especially. And the scary, sad thing is we don't get to choose those. We can choose friendships. We can choose romantic relationships. We can choose all that. We don't get to choose our family. So we have to kind of learn how to navigate it. But those relationships are so important. And our inner circle relationships, whether it's our parents or whether it's, an aunt that we're particularly close to. Allie's got several friends who lost their moms at early ages when they were young. And so their inner circle relationships might look a little bit different. But when something great happens or something bad happens to us, the first thing we want to do is go find our people and tell them about it. We want to call our person. If something disappoints us, we want to call our inner circle person and say, hey, this just happened to me. And, so we're in such need of those family relationships. So we talk in the book about how important they are and just trying to set the stage for our girls that these are the permanent relationships in your life. Friendships are going to come and go. Relationships with boys are going to come and go. These are your permanent relationships. So Allie had 3 ideas, again, that get pulled from that Philippians passage for ways that we can keep our family relationships strong and healthy.
Well, yeah, we talk about, because I think a lot of times girls or young people, who am I? Middle school and high schoolers in their family relationships can feel very powerless, and they can feel like, well, my mom is just telling me to do this, and my dad is making me do this, and I just have to wait till I grow up to make any type of choices for myself. And so I walk through with the girls, like there are 3 things that you can control. You can't control who your mom is. You can't control the rules. You can't control this, this, and this. But here are 3 things you can control. You can control to appreciate, or you can choose to appreciate, you can choose to forgive, and you can choose gentleness. And so appreciation, the classic gratitude, look at the things, look for the positive. Did you have clean laundry today? Did you have a meal today? That is your mom. You should appreciate forgiveness. This, you could talk about forgiveness forever, but we live with broken, sinful people who are going to disappoint you and maybe even hurt you. And you can choose to either harbor that and make your relationship go farther apart, or you can choose to forgive and reconcile. And then the last one is choosing to be gentle, which this mostly came out in my relationship with my brothers growing up, because I have 2 older brothers. Gentleness is not something I would use to describe,
to characterize them.
But I could choose gentleness, and the more I chose gentleness, the more they would back off, honestly, and I would not be so bothered by them, because gentle Allie was not fun to pick on, but angry and frustrated and crazy Allie was really fun to pick on. So those are the 3 things you can control. But even going back to your question, why it's so important, I think a crazy cool manifestation of this is my wedding day. So I got married in March of 2020, which, if you remember March of 2020, that is a crazy time.
Her wedding date was actually April 4th.
Sure. So we, switched some things around. And ultimately, my wedding went from 500 people, which is too many, but that was going to happen, to family. At the end of the day, when the world was literally crumbling around us, I looked around on one of the most important days of my life, and it was my family that was there. It wasn't my mom's chiropractor's best friend, the people we invited.
The 500 others.
It was my grandparents and my brothers and their wives and my husband's brothers and his family. And it was enough. It was all that I needed for that day. And so looking down the future, yes, friendships are so important. And I have friends who are like sisters to me, who I adore. But at the end of the day, when things fall apart or things go crazy, it's your family that's there. And it's your family that will show up always. So it's hard for middle schoolers and high schoolers to realize that and grasp that. And that's why, I just tried to use simple, here are things you can control, because you want control. We all want control. But if you look in the future, if you look forward, these are the relationships that are going to last. And so these are the relationships you really need to be careful with and to cherish and pour into.
Those are really good. Those 3 things. I love those. So my Harriet has 2 older brothers. So I feel like you guys could probably talk. You could probably teach her a lot of things.
I'll call her. That gentleness thing, I have carried into a life of, I'm a parent now and I have a husband, and it's like, okay, gentleness,
work relationships,
choosing gentleness helps.
It diffuses the situation often. So it's a principle, that's what's so cool. I think about what, when we walk through the Gospels or letters of Paul, there's so many principles, and they're true whether you believe them or not. And they're true whether you engage with them or not. They're just true because principles are true. And gentleness diffuses arguments, that diffuses the situation. It just does. It's an equation. So I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about your relationship a little bit. Obviously you have a good one, because you wrote a whole book together.
We did. Yeah, it happened.
So have you always had a good relationship? Has it always been solid? What have some of maybe your challenges been? And how did you use all of that to get to where you are now?
Well, I will say Allie has been a joy of a daughter, and just a joy to raise.
Sometimes.
But we are not the perfect family. I think people, when it's a ministry family, sometimes there's the illusion of people believe that it's the perfect holy Stanley family. They just pray together and have Bible study all day and all that kind of stuff. We were such a normal family, really, Steph. All the things. We were not perfect parents. We did not have perfect kids. We did not have perfect environments in our home. There's plenty of stuff. But one of the things that we really did try to do as parents was to parent with the relationships in mind. And at the end of the day, when we're making a decision about something, how does this affect our relationships, our relationship in our marriage, our relationships with our children, and our relationship with our other inner circle people? And so, we just made decisions that way, and it fostered a deeper, better relationship overall. But there were plenty of times I think about a story just because of our differences in personality, partly, and then just the mom errors. We're all going to make these errors. And I was the mom who wanted to look for all the teachable moments. And if I couldn't find one, then I was going to create a teachable moment. And that never works. Maybe you get lucky every once in a while, but mostly that's not how it works if you want something to really land with your kids. So I have this vivid memory of Allie and me just driving around. I don't know, I was taking her to something, and she asked me a question, and I wish that I could remember even what the topic was, but I can't. And she asked me a question, so I answered her question, but then I just kept telling her some more stuff, about the why and the verse and the thing and all the things. And so finally she goes, Mom, sometimes when I ask you a question, you tell me way more than I want to know. I wish that you would just answer my question. And I thought, thankfully, I had a moment where I could actually receive that. And I was like, oh, Allie, I do that. And I am so sorry. I can hear myself doing it. And I probably already know I shouldn't be doing it, but I can't stop myself. And because you've told me that, I'm going to try so hard to do better at that and not just, regurgitate everything that I feel like you need to know in the car on the way to soccer practice. When you ask me one simple little question. Yeah. So I think our relationship, to answer your question, has been great, but not perfect. And we've just learned to navigate those things as they've come. But parenting with that relationship in mind, having these opportunities to talk together about important topics before things become an issue is huge.
Yeah. And I think inviting feedback is helpful for parents. Because as a kid, you're like, what power do I have? What power do I have? Like, this is just how it's going to be forever. And so I think my parents were both good about like, hey, if we do something that is upsetting, if we hurt your feelings, I have a lot of feelings, and my brothers didn't really have as many feelings as I did. And so navigating even just how to be the only girl in a family was difficult and harder for me to voice and harder for me to stand up for myself and not wanting to be a burden and the emotional one, So I think my parents were good at being like, hey, let us know if we're doing something wrong. And that creates a humility and it creates a safeness to be like, okay, you did hurt. I think I learned the term hurt my feelings when I was like 2 years old, because it's like, all right, how did I hurt your feelings? And so I think that was a really helpful way. But we don't see eye to eye. I think about my room. I think that was the biggest cause of tension in our relationship, was the
artist, engineer.
The messiness of my
room. Did you put any
piece
of clothing that you touched on the ground?
Yeah. That's where it goes. That's where I'm like, no, that is not where it goes.
So that both my parents are, type A.
Enneagram 1.
A mess is sinful. And I'm like, I haven't read that in the Bible, though. Like, I think you made that up. I don't think it is.
Number 11.
Yeah. So that was a huge, and because I just was like, I don't understand. And they're like, I don't understand you. And it's like, well, I don't understand you. And, a little thing like a messy room would spiral to like, you don't even love me, know? Yeah. So there's plenty of that. There's plenty of that. Yeah. And I'm still messy.
And there were
they didn't fix me.
So many times, Steph, where I just needed to apologize. Even if I was right, my approach could be wrong. And I needed to apologize just flat. Not, oh, you did wrong, but I need to apologize for where I responded. That's not really an apology. An apology is 100%. I'm just owning this. And I'm so sorry that I responded to you that way. So, one of the things that we talked a lot about to our kids about growing up was how to appropriately apologize. You don't say sorry. That's what the boys would always want to do. Okay, Garrett, you need to apologize to Andrew. Sorry. Like, sorry is not a sentence. It's, I'm sorry for fill in the blank. It is a full sentence. But even as parents, I think it's so important. Allie mentioned humility on the parent side. So important for us to model humility for our kids, model what it looks like to apologize in a healthy way, model what it looks like to invite feedback and to ask our kids, what's going on in your heart. One of the things Andy was so good at nighttime, putting our kids to bed, was to ask them some questions about their heart. Because he knew, and we knew, that guarding their hearts is of utmost importance, because from it flows the well springs of life. And so one of the things that Andy would say to them, putting them to bed, was, "Hey, how's your heart? It was a whole long
Did
list.
anybody hurt your feelings
Did anybody hurt your feelings
Yes.
today?"
Someone
giving
my
them
brothers.
an opportunity.
My brothers hurt my feelings.
But giving them an opportunity to pull the stuff out of their hearts that could get buried and cause bigger problems later. That was just part of the nightly routine for us.
Yeah.
That was a lot of answer to a very simple question.
No,
you asked.
I loved all of it.
Our relationship is good. It's good.
Okay, I do have to tell you before we go that your first podcast and the idea of parenting with the relationship in mind has been like huge for me. And I refer back to that podcast all the time. I tell people to listen to it because I think it's just so good. Because sometimes we don't. We think about the behavior modification and teaching them the important things like cleaning their room. And we forget that sometimes those things aren't that important. In the grand scheme of things, there's very few things that are more important than your relationship with your kids.
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right. It's so important. So important.
Do you have any, before we go, like last encouragement for moms and daughters, or for a mom who's feeling like, I really want to work on my relationship with my daughter, but I'm scared?
That's such a great question, Steph. I think one of the most important things is for moms to be students of their daughters, to just to spend the time that it takes, invest the time that it takes to know your daughter, know what her temperament is, know what her love language is. If she's old enough, do the Enneagram thing, but take those tests and really be a student of your daughter, because you will approach hard situations more appropriately for her personality and her temperament if you've been a student of your daughter, or in all your kids. But in this mother-daughter relationship, that's so important. That's one of the reasons we wanted to do Meet Me in the Middle, because I feel like it gives moms an opportunity to be a student of their daughter when they talk about these topics. And it pulls out, hey, what are you afraid of? Hey, what's going on, in this particular area? It allows you to be a student of your daughter, and you will respond and you will approach difficult things appropriately for that personality. You know this because you've got 3 kids. So do I. I can't believe how different they all are, coming from the same gene pool in our situation. They are so completely different. So being a student and being willing to take the time and invest the energy to understand, how is Allie wired, and what are the trigger words that go poorly if I use, and what are the words that speak life into her that cause our relationship to be better and deeper. So I would say, moms, be a student of your daughter, and your relationship will sustain through the middle school and high school years in a much healthier and more enjoyable way.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think I would say, going off of that, in whatever way best works for your daughter, communicate that you're safe. Communicate that this is a safe place and you can tell me anything. And this is a safe place and I've struggled too. And this is a safe place and I'm always going to be here for you. I think communicating that you are safe as a mom will just allow her to come to you. It won't be like you're chasing her down, trying to figure out everything that's going on in her life, but it's like, I know that I'm safe. So if you need something, or you're going through something and you need time with me, you have it. Like, you have me because I'm safe. And so I think that looks different, whether it's just sitting next to your daughter silently if she loves quality time, or literally communicating, hey, I'm here for you and I'm safe. And I know you're going to go through a lot and you're going to learn how to be independent, but I hope you know that I'm here always. So I think that just builds confidence. It builds identity. It builds all the things that your girls are needing.
And if you're going to tell your daughter that you're safe, you need to be safe. And that means you're not going to go talk to your best friend about what your daughter told you. You're not going to, you're not going to go talk even to your sister, your own sister, about what your daughter told you. And you're not going to freak out, and you're not going to punish her for what she tells you. So, if you're going to try to foster a safe environment relationship, you've got to make sure that you know what that means and how to be that safe person.
And then use that humility and apologizing when you mess it up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. So good.
Yep.
You guys, thank you so much for being on and for just writing this and getting this message out for mothers and daughters. I personally appreciate it. So I think others will too. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you so much for listening, you guys. I really loved the emphasis on being a student of your daughter's personality and needs, and also the reminder that girls face so many pressures, and we have an opportunity as moms to address them and create a safe landing space for not just our girls, but for all of our kids. Thank you again for listening. Just a reminder to leave a review if you loved this episode. It really helps reach more parents and get the word out so that more people can find us. May God bless you this week. May you draw closer to God and deepen your relationship with Him so that you have space to deepen your relationship with those around you. Let your love for Him overflow out into your love for others. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you love this podcast, would you please consider leaving a review and sharing it with a friend? This is the best way to reach more people and encourage even more parents. Christian Parenting is a donor-funded ministry, and we rely on friends like you to keep podcasts like this going. So to find out more about Christian parenting and to make a donation, head over to christianparenting.org or at christianparenting_org on Instagram. Thank you again. See you next week.
Fall's here, and so are incredible sales at Tanger Outlets. Find must-have handbags, footwear, and all the latest fall arrivals, all at unbeatable savings. Shop top brands like Nike Factory Store, Crocs, Gap Outlet, Coach, and even more brands you love. Save more every time you shop with deals up to 70% off. Tanger Outlets, always on trend, always on sale. Plan your trip at tanger.com.